Hello everyone. Today I'm presenting a research proposal to explore how gamification can be used specifically in informal science education settings. This study hopes to investigate whether game-like elements can increase engagement and enhance learning outcomes in settings like science centers. By informal science education, I mean science learning outside of traditional classrooms, such as visits to interactive science museums or STEM-focused summer camps. It promotes a public understanding of science through hands-on activities and allows self-paced learning. Gamification involves integrating elements that makes games enjoyable into non-game environments. The idea is to deepen learner engagement by presenting lessons in ways that are more motivating to the student. The student might be more driven to finish a lesson if there's like a storytelling narrative to go along with it, or if they can see if they can rank higher than their friends on a leaderboard. It's important to study this because while gamification has been studied fairly well in classrooms, there's limited research on its effectiveness in informal education. These environments present unique challenges, like learners often have limited time, varying levels of prior exposure to science, and different motivations for participation. Some kids are excited to be there, others are forced. Gamification offers a potential solution by making these experiences more interactive, inclusive, and impactful. The primary goal of this research is to investigate whether gamification can enhance learning and engagement in informal science education. Specifically, I'm aiming to evaluate which game elements work best, how they influence learning and engagement, and how or whether their impact varies across different demographic groups. This will help us design gamified tools in the future that are both effective and inclusive. In this section, I'll provide an overview of the existing literature on gamification and its potential applications in informal science education. I'll cover several key studies that will form a foundation for the research proposal. These studies touch on gamification in education, challenges within informal science education, and previous research on gamification's effectiveness. Let's start by looking at the foundational works on gamification in education. CAP's work in The Gamification of Learning and Instruction lays the theoretical foundation for this research. It shows how gamified features improve learning by engaging intrinsic motivation. For informal science education, this suggests we can design activities that make learning more game-like to drive interest and participation. Tetterding et al. Complements this with a practical framework for how to apply game elements in non-game contexts, offering ideas such as feedback loops and level progression. These works collectively guide the research approach, focusing on taking proven gamification strategies and applying them to informal science education settings. In Learning from Museums, Falk and Dierking emphasize the dual nature of informal science education, how its strength is in allowing flexible, self-paced learning, and how this same flexibility can lead to shallow engagement due to limited time and distractions. Gamification offers an opportunity to bridge this gap by creating entertaining and interactive experiences that capture attention and motivate deeper exploration. Similarly, the National Research Council's report emphasizes the need for structured elements to support meaningful learning. By applying gamification, we aim to introduce such structure and increase both engagement and learning retention in these environments. Hamari et al. In Does Gamification Work? Provides an analysis showing that gamification can improve motivation and engagement when tailored to specific audiences and contexts. For example, a museum's leaderboard for quiz results might motivate families differently than a point-based scavenger hunt. This contextual sensitivity will guide the study in adapting gamification strategies to suit diverse informal education environments. Learning Science in Everyday Life by Bell et al. Covers the importance of combining hands-on engagement with opportunities for reflection and discussion, which aligns closely with gamified approaches that encourage interaction. They also emphasize inclusivity, something we aim to address by designing gamified activities that are engaging and accessible to individuals from varied backgrounds and different learning levels. Together, these studies inform our efforts to create our gamification framework. However, there are still several gaps in the literature. Most studies focus on formal classroom settings, leaving informal environments underexplored. There's also limited research on which specific gamification elements, such as narratives versus challenges, are most effective in these settings. Lastly, little is known about how factors like age or prior science exposure affect gamification. This study hopes to address these gaps by examining how gamification works in informal science education and how it can be tailored to diverse audiences. In this section, I'll discuss the specific research questions that will guide this study. The primary research question seeks to understand the overall impact of gamification in informal science education. Specifically, I would like to look at whether introducing game elements can increase participant engagement with science content and improve learning outcomes. The goal is to determine whether gamification is an effective strategy for making science education more engaging and educational in informal settings. When an entire science center is created to already be engaging and interactive, there may not even be a need to gamify its elements. This secondary question digs deeper into the specific gamification elements that may have the most significant impact. Research has shown that different game mechanics can lead to different outcomes depending on the context. For example, point systems and leaderboards might encourage competition and challenge, while narratives could foster emotional investment and deeper engagement with content. By systematically testing these elements, I aim to pinpoint which gamification features work best for both motivating participants and enhancing their understanding of scientific concepts. This research will also consider how participant characteristics, such as age and prior knowledge of science, affect their response to gamified learning activities. For example, younger participants might be more responsive to playful game mechanics, while older learners may prefer more intellectually challenging tasks. Participants with a higher level of prior exposure to science may engage differently with gamified content than those with less experience. Some elements, such as group-based competition or rewards, may be more effective for certain demographic groups, while others may need adjustments to be equally engaging for all. Understanding these factors will help ensure that gamification strategies are inclusive and effective across a wide range of participants. I'll outline the methods I propose to use in my study. These include details about participants and settings, the gamified activities I'll test, and the techniques for data collection and analysis. Two primary groups will be examined: children who visit the Science Center as part of a mandatory field trip, and those who come voluntarily with family or friends. Their participant pool will include grade school children and teens aged about 10 to 18, reflecting the target audience of science centers. This approach will allow the study to explore how gamification impacts engagement and learning across different age groups and contexts. Recruitment will be conducted in collaboration with science centers, ensuring a representative sample of the audiences served by these informal learning environments. This study will take place in science centers and science museums. By narrowing the scope to science centers, I can better understand gamification's impact in public-facing, informal learning environments, while still addressing the challenge of sustaining visitors' attention. For this study, I plan to use a custom-designed app. The app will be created to complement the existing exhibits, ensuring that they integrate with the content and themes already on display. Rather than treating each exhibit as an isolated experience, the app will link them together through an overarching game narrative. The narrative will create a unifying storyline, presenting the exhibits as interconnected pieces of a larger scientific adventure. Within the app, I'll also use 3 different types of gamified activities. First, there will be a point system, where participants will earn points for completing activities, solving puzzles, or answering quiz questions. This system hopes to provide instant feedback and a sense of accomplishment. Second, I'll use narratives, which will be story-driven experiences where participants take on roles such as scientists on an important mission. For example, participants might need to solve problems or conduct experiments to progress through the storyline, creating a more immersive and emotionally challenging experience. And Lastly, I'll also use competitive challenges, which will include leaderboards, and will be team-based or individual competitions where participants can compete to achieve the highest score. To evaluate the effectiveness of gamification, I'll collect both qualitative and quantitative data. For engagement, I'll measure metrics such as time spent interacting with the content, the number of activities completed, and participants' self-reported interest or enjoyment levels. To assess learning outcomes, participants will take quizzes or surveys both before and after the gamified activities. Finally, qualitative data will be gathered through interviews with the participants themselves. To analyze quantitative data, such as the engagement metrics and quiz scores, I'll use statistical software like SPSS or R. These tools will help me perform inferential analysis to determine if there were statistically significant outcomes. For qualitative data, I'll use NVivo to organize and code feedback and interview transcripts. A thematic analysis approach will help me identify recurring patterns. By combining quantitative and qualitative analyses, I should have a comprehensive understanding of gamification's impact. All participants will receive detailed information about the study's purpose, methods, and potential risks so that they can provide informed consent before participating. To ensure confidentiality, I'll anonymize all data collected, removing any identifying information. Participants will also be informed that their participation is entirely voluntary and that they can withdraw from the study at any time without any consequences. In this section, I'll discuss the expected results of the study. Mainly, I hope to improve that adding gamified elements will lead to a noticeable increase in participant engagement. Participants are likely to have a deeper understanding of scientific concepts and report higher levels of interest in science in general. I expect point systems and leaderboards to encourage participants to stay longer at the museum exhibits, while narratives should improve emotional investment, helping with knowledge retention. I also predict that specific gamification elements will influence engagement in learning in different ways. I think narratives are expected to be particularly effective for long-term knowledge due to their ability to create emotionally engaging experiences. Participants who engage with story-driven activities hopefully will report higher levels of enjoyment and motivation. Competitive challenges, such as the team-based games or leaderboards, are likely to have a strong impact, but more for short-term knowledge. I suspect that there will be a burst of learning so that learners can try and top the leaderboard, but that the knowledge retention will be worse than the narratives, though hopefully they'll still be better than without a leaderboard at all. I expect demographic factors to significantly influence the effectiveness of gamification. For example, I think that younger participants are more likely to respond positively to playful elements like narratives, which will align with their developmental stage and interest in games. In contrast, I think older participants might prefer activities that emphasize competition with their peers, like the leaderboards. Participants' prior exposure to science is another factor. Those who already have a strong science background may engage more deeply with gamified tasks that challenge their existing knowledge, while novices might benefit from more simpler, introductory gamified elements. While short-term engagement is an immediate goal, I also expect gamified elements to have long-term benefits. Participants who engage in gamified learning are anticipated to retain their knowledge longer and maintain a sustained interest in science topics. For instance, participants who complete a narrative-based gamified activity might continue to explore related science topics independently because they're so inspired by their immersive experience. In this section, I'll discuss the potential implications of my research. The findings of this study could directly inform the design of informal science education programs. For science centers, having their exhibits be unified through gamification could make visitors' trips more engaging, encouraging them to spend more time exploring and learning. Additionally, gamification's ability to make learning enjoyable and interactive could help attract a broader audience, including individuals from underrepresented groups in STEM fields. From a theoretical perspective, this study could validate or refine existing theories about gamification and informal learning. For example, it may support the idea that gamified learning environments enhance engagement and retention through intrinsic motivation. Or it may show that science centers, which are already seen as engaging alternatives to classroom learning, don't show as much benefit from gamification as traditional settings do. This study could also have policy-level implications, particularly in the context of STEM education and outreach. If the findings show that gamification significantly enhances engagement in learning, it could encourage greater adoption of these strategies in programs aimed at increasing STEM literacy. Additionally, funders and policymakers might prioritize investments in gamified educational tools and platforms. By demonstrating the effectiveness of gamification, this research could make a compelling case for allocating resources towards programs that integrate these strategies, especially those targeting underserved populations. That's all for my research proposal. Please leave any questions you may have in the comment section here or on Blackboard, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thank you very much.